So our final presentation today is from IBM, and I'd like to invite Lory Thorpe to come to the stage. Lory, as you can imagine, and IBM, it's about data and how we manage data.
Hi, everyone. I'm conscious I'm standing between you and lunch, so hopefully I'll be able to keep you entertained for a little bit. So my name is Lory Thorpe. I work in IBM, but I have a long history in IoT. In fact, I started when it was called machine-to-machine. And I wanted to talk to you. So since I've moved into IBM, where we look at different industries, we're not just looking at the telco industries, but we're looking at different industries. We're looking at data. I've taken a slightly different perspective compared to when I was working specifically in IoT. And earlier in Mark's panel, I thought it was quite interesting the fact that when we think of what is 5G IoT, Luke mentioned confusing, and I can't remember the other person, but mentioned opportunity. And I'm just going to build a little bit on that because I think actually those two things are really spot on in terms of where we are, what the opportunity is, but also what do we need to do now going forward? How do we really leverage that opportunity? So Shane invited me and to speak here. I was involved in the early mobile IoT initiative when the group formed. The theme this year is around energy and environment, and I wanted to talk about how I see some of these themes evolving, and also tell you a little bit about what IBM is doing to pull together what I see as a little bit the different parts of the jigsaw puzzle. So when we talk about Internet of Things, I kind of like to break it down into connectivity, which we've heard a lot about today, and we've heard a lot about sort of the engineering side of connectivity, and this is something that ultimately there's been a lot of work that's been done over many years to be able to get us where we are now. If I take a step back on the connectivity and I look at it from outside of telco, one of the interesting things is that the expectations on connectivity, they just want it to work. They want things to just connect. They want the performance. They just want it to be there. And when we start to talk about things like link budget, or we start to talk about latency, as in telco, as we tend to do, you can see people's eyes starting to glaze over because they just want it to work and to be good enough to do what they need it to do. So that was sort of quite a revelation. So coming from a telco background, I was appalled that they didn't want to talk about the link budget. So the other aspect is trust and security, and I think Matt actually he talked at length about it. Again, people want to trust. They want to trust what they're using. They want to trust that the data is coming from where it says it's coming from, and all of those things. So it's kind of a hygiene factor that is an expectation. How it gets done from the outside, it's like it just needs to work. The last part, and I won't spend too much time on it, but on the devices, I think there the key aspect is around cost. It's around having available, affordable devices, the types of devices that we need to fulfill ultimately the requirements of the use case. And again, I'm bringing a little bit of an outside-in perspective because I think sometimes it's easy to get lost in the details of what we're trying to do. This doesn't obviously take away the need for us to do that. It doesn't take away the need for the roaming to be sorted out. It doesn't take away the need for the networks to be built in a way that they actually provide the performance that needs to be provided. But I'm looking at it a little bit from outside in rather than from the point of view of the telco. from an IBM perspective, clearly one of the key parts that that are of interest to us, it's the data. And as we move into a new era of both connectivity and IoT, I really feel that the time has come to really start talking more about what is ultimately the result that we're trying to achieve. And to me, it really is about the data. So if you like, connectivity, IoT, AI, multi-cloud, enterprise applications, it's, a lot of it is it's about how you can get access to the data, how you bring the data to where you need it, how you analyze the data, and how that data helps you to get to the actions that are ultimately data-driven. So it feels like there is a little bit of a change from working on the mechanics of how it needs to work to why it needs to work, and to sort of being able to achieve some of the results that we've promised. Another sort of short reflection and slight rant. At MWC in Barcelona, I was talking to somebody about 5G, and their comment, and again, not telco, their comment was, well, 5G hasn't really delivered on its promise. At which point I sort of got on my high horse, because I said, well, actually 5G, it's technically, although 5G appears on your phone, but all of the capabilities that 5G has promised, they're not here yet. They're still to come. It's an evolving landscape. And in some ways, I feel that the telco industry hasn't done itself justice from a PR perspective, because in some ways we've maybe set expectations that expectations that are unrealistic. And here the example is, well, I want a device that works underground, and I want it to not consume energy. I want it to last for 30 years, and I want it to have high bandwidth, and we need to bring it back, obviously, to physics. It's ultimately, I think a lot of the people here know that certain things just, this isn't fairy dust, this is physics. But from the outside, 5G has promised a lot, and 5G will deliver a lot. It just maybe it hasn't delivered it as soon as people were expecting it. And I think maybe there's a reflection here as an industry where we need to set more realistic expectations around exactly what capabilities can be delivered and when. So going back to the data, and this is from a report that IBM has published quite recently. I thought I'd steal the picture because I quite liked it. So when we talk about data, so IoT, ultimately, it's about sourcing data. It's about getting the data from where it is and pulling it together. So when we think of a car, you think of all of the different types of data that you can source from a vehicle, and all of the different things that it can do, all the way from making the driving experience better, making the sales experience better. So when you go and buy a car, when you use the car, when you want to go and sell the car. And safety obviously is another aspect. So here I just wanted to show a little bit an example of a device, or rather a cluster of devices, because effectively a car, it's a cluster of devices, and how that data that we get, for example, from a car, can actually link to some of the topics that we've been discussing today around efficiency, around energy consumption, because we can use that data to effectively make data-driven decisions that allow us to be more efficient, that allow us to route traffic in a different way, or that allow us to manage parking in a different way, allow the car to behave in a different way. So all of these things, ultimately, it's all about the data. And I just wanted to use this as an example, because I think actually connected vehicle it does bring together a lot of the things that we're trying to do. And I think, we mentioned earlier, we were talking about low power wide area and the sort of low cost devices, all the way to effectively something that is of high value like a car. It's all about the data. So what do we do with the data? Well, the data effectively allows us to accelerate into relevant insights and potentially efficiency. So when we talk about what we do with it, data is actionable. We can make decisions based on data that are data-driven. And this is where automation can come in. So again, another aspect that sort of is linked to efficiency, linked to doing things in a more automated way, in a more informed way, and linked to ultimately business outcomes. And I think that is what we're all here to look at. This is what we're all, all of the work that we've been doing over many years, when we talk about interoperability, when we talk about roaming, when we talk about low power devices, all of this sort of they're pieces of a jigsaw that lead to the business outcomes. So I wanted to share a couple of examples of some work that IBM has done recently around how we've leveraged data insights to effectively optimize outcomes and to achieve these business outcomes. So the first one, it's around petrochemical processing plant. And this is an example of on-site coverage. So this is a case of a private network. It's a tracking scenario. It was done using CBRS spectrum, and I particularly like this because actually the discussion here is moving beyond just the campus network. So this is now looking at how you can link this particular scenario to other environments that include the public network, include other private environments. And really, this is, I think, a good example of where we're looking at the connectivity as not just as a single solution, not just as a private network, but we're looking at it more holistically, where we can include in this private networks, we can include public networks, we can include slicing, we can include things like open APIs, we can include non-terrestrial networks. And we start to look at connectivity as a holistic capability that is the enabler of the business value. And I thought that this was a good example where I believe that this philosophy is really being adopted, because this is ultimately what the enterprises are expecting. They don't want to hear about whether a device is going to work in one geography or another. They don't want to talk about challenges in roaming. They want to just know that it works. So they see sort of that connectivity as being a real enabler. The second use case that I wanted to talk about is something that IBM has put quite a lot of effort into, which is around visual inspection. And again, linking back to the data theme, visual inspection, it is about collecting a certain type of data, being able to process it, often with some sort of constraints and requirements in terms of latency, being able to collect and action that data, often, in sort of particularly sensitive situations. And here, this is a collaboration between IBM and Ford, where effectively we have used the visual inspection capability. We've used IoT to be able to reduce the defects, to basically ensure that things are done again more efficiently. And again, this is a capability that will be scaled out across multiple facilities. So we've started effectively with the POC, but it is something that is scalable, and looking at sort of how this scales out to multiple facilities. And we're looking at how we harness the power of the data that we can actually gain from the visual inspection capability, and how we can use that to make things more streamlined, to be able to make more data-driven decisions, and to ensure that the process, that effectively the manufacturing process, is more sustainable and more efficient. So these were two examples that I wanted to bring as part of this discussion, where I think it's showing sort of the central role of data. The last part of this, what I wanted to talk about is, I mentioned earlier the jigsaw, and again, speaking to many of my colleagues across some of the other industries. So talking to the banking people, to the manufacturing people, to the automotive people, I think it's looking at sort of the expectations and looking at the confusion aspect and the opportunity aspect. As an industry, we really have a huge opportunity. Now, what we need to do is we need to bring together all of these different parts of the jigsaw that we've been working on for so long. And we actually have a very, very good story. We need to now bring it to the fore in a way that is consumable. And that is happening. It's taking longer than people would like, because things tend to take longer than people would like. But I think we need to keep going. We need to keep going and addressing some of the challenges that we're seeing, working together. I think the ecosystem aspect is probably the single most important aspect that will determine whether we are successful or not in actually being able to ultimately leverage the power of 5G, leverage the promise of 5G. Because certainly I resent someone saying, well, actually 5G hasn't delivered on its promise. I believe it will deliver on its promise. I believe it is delivering on its promise. Maybe not as quickly as people would like, but you know, that is sometimes the nature of how technology evolves, and the time that it takes to actually solve some of those difficult, nasty engineering problems that, you know, a lot of people may not want to talk about, but ultimately somebody needs to solve. Last slide. IBM is working across a number of different areas, from the connectivity to IoT. Obviously, AI and generative AI is one of the key topics within the company. We've made a big investment on this. Security, automation, and sustainability. So if you would like to come and see us at the booth, please come and have a look at some of the things we're doing. But you know, the last message here is, you know, we need to continue the fight. It's difficult, but if it was easy, you know, they wouldn't need us. I really believe in what is being done, and I believe that there is light at the end of the tunnel. We need to keep going.
Well, that's it. I think that concludes things. It's a wrap. It only remains for me to thank all the speakers and our sponsors, AT&T and Valid, and to all of you for coming here this morning. And hopefully we'll see you in Barcelona for the next 5G IoT Summit. Thank you.